Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Gail. You got Susie and our special guest, Gwendolyn. So here she is. Everybody, I want to just say hi to some people. You see my finger, technical difficulties again. I'm on my phone. Say hi, Teresa. Hi, Dream Journey One. Hey, Susie. Hey, In Car. Hey, Butterfly Kisses. Whoop. Hey, Tina. I think I just highlighted somebody. Oh, yeah. I have to remove, I don't know how to remove that. Can you remove that, Susan? Thank you. Thanks, Tina. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I think I got everybody. I hope for everybody. Oh, hey, M. Hey, Starry Night Seeker. Hey, Patty. Hey, Kathleen. Hey, thanks for joining us. And as I said, we're going through, hey, Teresa, we're going through technical difficulties again. I'm beginning to think the snow has caused me a lot of technical difficulties this time. And I haven't gotten everything back to normal yet. Yesterday was the first time I got out of my garage. So, yay, I was able to move around. Gwendolyn, we've had an amazing amount of snow here. Hey, Prince Charming's mom. Hey, Son of Watt. Hey, White Dragon. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, Gwendolyn, for coming and joining us today. So, hey, Roanna. Anyway, we're going to start talking to Gwendolyn. And y'all were kind of like in a distance, so I can't hardly see you. And Susie's going to help us with the chat. I brought her forward because it's hard for me to read what the chat is on my phone and navigating it anyway. Hey, Finding Phoenix, thanks for joining. Okay, Gwendolyn, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start off with simple questions. And this first simple question is like, where are you originally from?
I was born in Michigan, actually.
Michigan.
Yeah, I was born in Michigan. Good old Midwest. Yeah.
And
Outside of Detroit.
outside Detroit, I would never have guessed that because I thought you came from Massachusetts.
And then I grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Lived, in a lot of places.
And then how did you end up in North Carolina?
We have family here. I have a lot of family in Asheville and family in New Bern, which is where I am.
Right.
And we retired, my husband and I, and it just seemed the best choice.
Okay. All right. So, well, then let's go into your careers, all the careers that you've had.
Yeah. Well, I started my spiritual practice of shamanism back in 1989.
Right.
And I had a long career, over probably a little over 30 years as a special education teacher. And I worked with students who had mild to moderate disabilities. And then the latter part of my career, I worked with high school students who had
Ooh.
behavioral and emotional issues. They were the kids that were in detention, under suspension, into
Right.
drugs, all
Yeah.
of that. And I loved that. It was really my calling. And when I retired at 50, of course, I've been practicing shamanism for many years as a personal practice. And
Yeah. Well, that was going to be one of my next questions is what was your journey like to get to shamanism before that?
yeah, so I was introduced in 1989. I had moved from Massachusetts, actually from New Hampshire at that time, to Martha's Vineyard,
Okay.
which is where my husband was from. And when I moved there, probably a year after being there, I met a woman who became a very dear friend, and she had just studied in person with Michael Harner, who is a shaman who brought a lot of the practices from South America here to the West. And he now has what is called the Institute of Shamanism here in America. He has since passed. His wife, Sandra Ingerman, who a lot of people may be familiar with if they're familiar with shamanism, is alive and has sort of taken up his gauntlet and continues on with his institute and his work. And so he had trained them, and he had just left when I came on the scene. So I actually learned from this group of women and studied with them for about 4 years in circle with these women. So I learned everything that Michael Harner had passed down to them, and I also learned from my own guides.
Now, how long did that school last?
They worked with him, I think, probably for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been trained actually in 3 different shamanic frameworks.
Okay.
So, and actually worked for 13 years with a shaman on my own personal
Oh,
journey of
wow.
healing.
Is that
So
somebody who does that personal training, or is that somebody who's teaching also?
that is, yes, to both of those things. Someone who travels the world and trains one-on-one, teaches, and also holds healing circles. His name is Foster Perry. Um, and he has Golden Hummingbird is the name of his website, and he's world renowned now, and teaches shamanism all over the world. Um,
So when you were learning under him, he wasn't world renowned at that time.
well, he traveled, but he was sort of recent on that scene, global scene, and I didn't as much study with him as I would work on my own healing with him. So I came to him for healing for
Okay.
many years. And of course, through osmosis, when you're with someone that long, you do learn. There's no way that you can't learn or become familiar with their techniques for healing.
Right.
But my first training really was with Michael Harner. Michael Harner's teachings through this beautiful circle of women who studied for 4 years. I also studied as a psychic medium with a gentleman named David Merritt on Martha's Vineyard. And so I studied for 4 years. But, I'd been doing shamanic practice for so long. And one of the side effects, I kind of laugh. I said, one of the side effects of doing shamanic journey, which is a form of meditation, is that you become highly intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a side effect. It's not even something that you need to work for. I mean, I've always been intuitive since I was very little. I saw people who had passed, and they would come
Right.
to me. So, those of us in the field who do this work, we have very similar stories.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the intuitive wasn't there. I knew that would expand it, but your intuitive wasn't everybody intuitive before they started going into shamanism?
Not everyone.
Okay.
Not everyone. They say in shamanism in the West. Now, this is in the West. There are a lot of different camps. There's several different camps about it. There's some people who believe that you need to be born into a family of shamans.
Mm-hmm.
Because you carry their lineage in your blood. You might think a lot of like the Middle Ages and people who are royal and they're the only ones who can be, the kings and queens or whatever. So there's that opinion there. They also feel that you need to be called by spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was called to spirit. I never dreamed of being a shamanic practitioner. Never entered my mind. It was really a spiritual practice of mine and nothing more. Although I had been doing a lot of teaching. Interestingly, I was teaching a lot of people up and down the East Coast how to do a shamanic journey. Very passionate about that. But again, I still never really tied it into becoming a practitioner. So the other way is that so the ways I've just said are called informal ways. I think it should be the opposite. I think these should be the formal ways where we're called by spirit or we're in a lineage already of that. But they call it an informal way. The formal way is that you get trained. So you would go to the Shamanic Institute, you would go to Alberto Villoldo, who's another very well-known shaman in the West who's teaching many, many people the Peruvian shamanic way, the Peruvian shamans of the high Andes. And he has a school called the Four Winds. And so people today can go and get training. Now, Alberto Villoldo was very, very generous in his writings. He has shared absolutely everything to anybody who wants to buy one of his books for $8. Wow. And you learn everything. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that. I recommend there's a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who teach the medicine wheel, which is the training, the shamanic training where you heal yourself, which is very important if you're going to become a practitioner. And
that would be my next question was about your business, the name of your business, and that you do offer classes and you offer group sessions for everybody. So I was going to let you we can roll into that where you talk about your actual business and everything.
Yes. I do want to say one more thing about the formal, informal ways.
Okay.
One of the challenges in the West is that And a lot of the South American shamans call American or Western people who say they are shamanic practitioners, they call them plastic shamans.
Oh my gosh, plastic shamans.
And there's a reason for that. Actually, a very, very
Well,
real.
immediately you think, oh, everybody has plastic surgery, but I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, they say it's plastic because there are people who will read, let's say, just for an example, they'll read one of Vialdo's books that covers sort of the whole medicine wheel information, but surface, covers it on the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they hang a shingle. They think that they know what's going on. Now, I've trained to be a shamanic practitioner. I trained for probably 24 years, you know, and then I've been in the practice now for about 12 years. And I have deep relationships with spirit. I have a very, very long healing journey for myself where, you know, I've been very passionate about transformation. And so, you know, in shamanism, we believe that when you transform your wounds, you become wise, you have wisdom, and that wisdom and that transformative practice or process becomes medicine, energetic medicine that shamanic practitioner carries into their healing practice. And my relationships with spirit, this is the heart of healing in shamanism. And if people don't have those relationships with spirit that are deep and abiding and that have helped them move through their own healing transformative processes to become more whole, they are plastic because they don't have medicine within them. And I say this because I think it's a very important message, and I don't think people are really speaking to it. So that being said, I think it's wonderful that people want to be shamans. You know, my teacher of the Peruvian way said to me, the world needs a shaman on every corner. Another way of saying that is the world needs a healer on every corner.
Right.
But we need healers that are authentic, you know. So my business, I started my business in my center in 2012. I started my practice in probably 2009. And that's when I was called in 2009 too, and I started responding to that. And I said to them when I was called in a meditation or in a journey, I was like, "Are you talking to me?" Like, I was really like confused, and it took me a little bit to answer, and I did answer the call, you know, to step into this whole new adventure. And so in 2012, after spending, I don't know, let's see, so probably two and a half years working with spirit directly. And also I felt like I wanted to, because I had studied with Michael Harner, I had studied with Foster Perry, but I felt like if I was going to go into this practice, I needed to have something to hang on the wall. Mm-hmm. So people would think I was legitimate. I already had a master's in education. I had a master's in social work. So I felt like I had enough under my belt to feel confident working with clients one-on-one, that I had the training I needed to really help people and hold them in safety. And so, but I decided that with the shamanic piece, I wanted to have something formal. So I studied with Stephen Sir, who has a whole college now. Back when I studied with him, it wasn't a college. It was very, very affordable, ridiculously affordable. And I studied Siberian shamanism. And it was amazing. And so I then began to be taught by my guides in meditation a whole new way of shamanism that was very, very surprising to me because it was nothing like anything I'd ever been taught. It included the chakras, it included a medicine wheel, and this had never been part of what I had learned before. And, you know, Spirit had me build a medicine wheel in my backyard. I had a very crowded neighborhood. They could all see my backyard. They could see me bringing in these big stones and doing ceremony, and I did it anyway. And so I then was led to, and then I moved to North Carolina. And when I was here, I was led to a woman named Chris Crone, who is in the Raleigh area, who teaches the medicine wheel by the Four Winds, which is Alberto Villoldo, who studied with the Laika, which are the shamans of the high Andes in Peru. And so I went for my first weekend. So it's a year-long program. And I went for my first weekend. And I literally, through the 4 days that I was there, basically had my jaw on the floor. Because
Really?
during those 4 months, 3 or 4 months that I was really, well, probably it was a little longer than that. Probably it was more like a year and a half, where I was being trained by spirit. They were telling me, they were teaching me, the teacher, Chris, was teaching me all these things that I already had learned. I had already learned directly from spirit.
Oh, okay. So you already, well, that would make your jaw drop, wouldn't it? Like, I already know it.
Yeah. And I said to myself, I will never, ever, as long as I live, doubt spirit, because you can't turn away from that kind of evidence or experience. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this brought up another question for me. What is the difference from all that different types of shamanism, the Peru, how did they all handle it differently? And
right.
Yeah.
That's an excellent question. Yeah, because if you see shamanism around the planet, it's difficult looking from a surface level, right? Because if you look at the shamans who are in Siberia, let's say, compared to the shamans who are in Peru, the shamans in Siberia are living in a very cold environment, very cold. So water becomes very important. They're living in a land that, part of the year it's dark all the time. So the sun then becomes very important. The moon becomes very important. This sort of stark landscape and the stars become very, very important to them. Their tools, because they have no trees, are going to look different. They're going to be using seal bone and seal skin. And so their culture is going to look very different than the culture of those in the high Andes of Peru, right? Who are eating cocoa leaves for the altitude, who are living in a very warm climate, who are high in the sky, which, the sky becomes hugely important. The mountains become very important. And so they begin to live in their environment in these two different ways, relating to the mountains as beings, relating to the sun and the stars as different beings. And so looking from the outside, you need to look through the cultural aspects of shamanism, which then, to really know what shamanism is, you need to go internally to what is happening. It's like going into a Catholic church and watching, the Eucharist or, the Sunday service. I don't know if I'm going to use the right words, but it's quite beautiful, right? There's all this meaning and symbology to everything they're doing. But looking at it from the outside, you cannot tell what someone who practices Catholicism believes in. You can't see what the heart of that religion is. And it's the same with shamanism. And so what makes shamanism is that there are universal pieces that are practiced within a people wherever they are in the planet. And shamanism is all over the planet. It's been with man throughout history. There's many who believe that it was the first form that man ever employed to connect with that which is larger than we are. Mm-hmm. God, source, creator, the universe. People call that energy many, many different things. And so that's really what happened, in the 60s when a lot of these anthropologists and men who traveled down to South America, they began to study these practices of medicine people. And they got close enough and stayed long enough to begin to see what was happening on the inside.
Okay.
Right? And so they discovered that there were universal things happening all over the globe when you found shamanic peoples. And some of those things are that they employ what Alberto Villoldo calls an ancient technology of journeying, which is a form of meditation. And what's very intriguing about the whole thing is that when you look at the cosmology, the construct of the universe in all of these places around the globe, you have a belief that is very, very similar, almost exact, that there are three worlds. There's a lower world, a middle world, and an upper world. None of them are hell. The lower world is considered Mother Earth, also the unconscious. The middle world is considered the bardo, the in-between, purgatory by some. It can be judged that way, but it's a place between heaven and earth, place between where incarnate souls end up if they are stuck in their issue, if they just aren't quite awake yet, if they are addicted. I mean, there's a million reasons why they stay. They don't want to leave their family, right? They don't want to leave a loved one. They don't want to leave the unrequited love that was never satisfied. I mean, there's a million reasons. And it's not unusual for a shaman to be working in this area for clients, to be going into the middle world to help them. And then there's the upper world, which is like heaven, right? It's a higher frequency, a higher vibration. So in Mother Earth, you will find, in that world, you'll find animals and plants and spiritual teachers. You'll find your power animals that will help you through all kinds of things. And it's also where you find your soul parts of your energy that have left during a trauma, a deep hurt, an unhealed grief, an abuse. And so the shaman will often travel into the lower world for clients for healing. And the upper world is a place where you go to learn, to expand, to meet with teachers, to meet a higher version of yourself, your soul that remembers your whole journey. That's really what your soul is. It's you, but it's like accessing all of your memory, of your experiences as a soul. So you have that cosmology, that world construct that's very related to consciousness. You have the idea of a power animal, that we connect with an animal that we choose before we're born to come in, that has the attributes that will help you through your soul's curriculum, the things that you plan to overcome and heal, the strengths. So for many years, I had a hippopotamus as a power animal. And I was orphan. I was a ward of the state for almost the first 5 years of my life. So for a lot of my adult life, I didn't remember the first 5 years of my life. And Hippo came and was with me for many years through my healing of these traumas. And I had all kinds of discoveries with Hippo. But Hippo came and said to me, I've come to help you regain your memory, your whole self. And I'm connected to your hippocampus, which is where the seat of our memory is.
Right.
So all kinds of things like that happen with power animal connections. So, and it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful thing. So that's another universal piece for shamanism found anywhere on the globe. So that's just a couple of examples. But that's how you discover that it's shamanism, because you'll go and you'll find these universal pieces being practiced, even though it may look like, very different from Africa to South America to America, etc.
Okay, well, great. Well, let's go a little bit to actually what you have to offer, the name of your business, and the things that you do. I know you do a lot of teaching yourself.
Yes. So my business is called the Center for Personal Evolution. And my center now is a virtual center. I've had when I lived on Martha's Vineyard, I had a center on Cape Cod, and that's where I began my first center in 2012. And then we moved to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and I had a practice in Virginia Beach. So sometimes people can find me through Virginia Beach. And now I'm in New Bern. And when COVID hit, I closed my center here. I think I was open about 2 years here. And so now it's just me. It always sort of was me, but I'm doing a lot virtually. Going to be opening offices again in the new year.
Have you already got the location or anything?
Not yet. But I do an awful lot online. Thank goodness for Zoom. I've actually been more active in my business on Zoom than I ever was at my brick and mortar, which I found to be very fascinating. Because, Zoom opens up the world to everybody. I mean, you're not just pooling from local. Now it's anybody, anywhere. And I had actually been working with clients from all over the world even before COVID hit. So
what are the things that you have to offer there?
Yeah. So I teach a medicine wheel program based on the 4 winds. And I was, they say a shaman really knows his calling when the community calls to them for something. Mm-hmm. And so so I've always done classes. So I would do classes on, intuition, on sound healing, on mediumship. I mean, just anything in the field you can think of. I would do shamanic stuff, how to journey, how to create medicine wheels for yourself, medicine shields, how to use essential oils, it's just everything. I mean, I've been doing it a long time. So just, you kind of think like, well, what would people be interested in? What's being called for at the time? And then I do some heavier hitting kinds of classes too, like healing through your chakras, which, I do that with sound. I do that with tuning forks, but healing through your chakras is about what are the stories in your chakras that are keeping you stuck, keeping you small, keeping you sick. And so we go through healing in that kind of class. I also teach how to work with your ancestors and heal your ancestral wounds, which is another heavy hitting class. I teach a class on what do I call it? The Divine Mystery School, where we learn an awful lot in their initiations in that, a lot of healing in that. I also give the 9 Munaki rites, which I don't charge for. So the 9 Munaki rites are what Alberto Villoldo is credited for bringing to the West for the healing of the planet, because Alberto Villoldo believes that industrialization began in the West, and it's the West that's responsible now to turn the world around.
Oh, wow.
And to heal the world. And so that's why you see such an upsurge in shamanic practitioners in the West, because it's sort of in our laps to shift it and to be responsible. So I also teach a medicine wheel, which is it's actually 8 months. We always say a year-long journey of healing, where we go around the medicine wheel and we heal in the 4 directions. And when you finish that program, you have all the tools you need if you choose to become a shamanic practitioner. But you don't have to. It's very much a journey of healing, more than it is a training for a shamanic practitioner. But you have those skills. And if you don't choose to do that formally out in the world as a job, you can bring healing technique to friends and families, which can be very powerful within your family and your circles, your personal circles. And I also teach an advanced medicine wheel, which takes everything I've learned from the 3 traditions I've been trained for and what I've learned from spirit over the last, I think, probably 32 years, something like that, maybe more. And so the advanced program is very guided by all of that through me and shamanism and how it's developed in my life and through, my teachings individually from my guides.
Well, great. Thanks, Gwendolyn, for all that information. Are you about ready to take some questions from people?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. All right. I think we have a few. Let's see what we have. Okay. Oh, wow. Yes, Susie, you could have to do this.
It's a question from White Dragon. Are shamans allowed to use thrown weapons, swords, spears, or wands? Why? Some of the most powerful energetic weapons are just those, swords, arrows, wands, etc., while in battle, from personal experience.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because before this podcast started, I happened to look up, and behind my computer, I have all these quotes that are sort of always, I'm putting ones up depending on what I'm going through or thinking about or drawn to. And then I shift them, right? So some will come down and new ones will go up. So I'm looking up at my board and it says, So this is an answer to your question around, and I've more than just this to say about it, but this idea of being in battle, right? Being in battle with spirit. Alberto Villoldo says, this is the quote, the art of the shaman is defeating the demons without battling them.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Because this work is done in love. Now, that doesn't mean that we lay over and let everybody walk on us. We don't. It's the power of love. It's the power of boundaries. It's the power of your own healing, your own clarity of spirit, of being in a whole healed state yourself, which is the best protection, mind you. Because in the universe, there's a law that like attracts like. And if you have had a lot of trauma in your life, you are not only vibrating at a beautiful level, because there's many things in your life that are whole and beautiful, but if you've had a lot of trauma, you're also vibrating at a lower frequency of that trauma. And if that universal law is true, which I believe it is, that like attracts like, you're not only attracting to you wonderful and beautiful experiences, you're also attracting that lower vibration as an opportunity to heal. Only as an opportunity to heal, not to come into battle with it, but to transform that wound into light, into love, into wisdom. And when it's transformed into wisdom and wholeness, you no longer attract that heavy energy, and the battle has ceased, and we live in peace. So do I use weapons? No, I don't. Do I use wisdom? Yes. Do I go into journey and help on the energetic level with clients to heal? Yes. Do I do the healing? No. Does spirit? Yes. Am I asked to do things? Yes. You know, if a client comes to me and I had a judge once in the military come to me, and she was very disillusioned by her job because she actually was a judge in a court dealing with sexual assault and sexual abuse in the military. So all day long and every day, she just heard these horrific stories every day. And she said, I'm miserable at my job. Well, for whatever reason, I had to go in journey. I had to go into her brain. And they sent me in with a chipmunk, because the chipmunk was little and could go into these crevices I know this sounds very weird and I sound like probably I should be in a straitjacket, but this is shamanism and it's powerful. So I went in because there was a belief system around her job that was keeping her very small and frightened and unhappy. And there was a wedge in her processes. It looked like looked like clock wheels, right? Wheels in a clock. And there was a piece of wood wedged in one of these wheels, so it couldn't work. And the chipmunk took it out. And what it did for her was it shifted her perception. It made her sort of able to find her own wisdom, and she had bad headaches because of her job. Anyway, in doing that energetic work, the chipmunk was able to, direction of spirit was able to pull that out and free her from that. And she began to love her job again. And that's just one very small example. So there isn't a need to battle. There is not a need to battle when it's done in love. And I think this is one of the largest misconceptions, right? I see things that are lower energy, lower frequency, they're a pain in the butt. They're just a pain in the butt because they're ignorant, right? And that's a judgment in and of itself. But they are new. They're immature. They're young. They're misdirected. We come here to Earth, and we agree to come here to experience light and dark. For Source to know themselves. Source asks, who am I? And the answer is, the only way to know yourself is to know what you're not. And we are light. And to come here, we experience what we are not, which is limited, suffering, immoral, unhappy, depressed, traumatized. We are not these things, but these are beautiful opportunities, as that might sound like an oxymoron, but they are beautiful opportunities to evolve consciousness, to evolve experience. And so I know there are many traditions who, where, swords and weapons and spears and magic and wands are very, very important. But I feel there's another place to go that's free of that. It's led by spirit.
Well, thank you, Gwendolyn. That was a great answer.
Oh, good.
Okay, well, let's see what's next.
Are animals from the angelic realms?
Good question.
Yeah.
Who's that?
From Elizabeth.
Okay.
That's a great question. I've seen a lot of images where you see dogs that have passed and they are in an angelic realm. And I can definitely see why there is that correlation with animals. And I say, why not? Of course, I think they can be in angelic realms. But I think one of the things we know, I do animal communication too. I just did one this week. I worked with a dog named Duke, who was taken to, the pound and had a very, very rough time. Found that he was very ill and struggling quite a bit. And so, had quite a conversation with Duke, and a transformative experience with him. So I'm familiar with animals. Am I an expert on it? Absolutely not. One of the things I've learned in this work is that just when you think you have it figured out, or you think you might have something figured out, they're going to shift it for you. And you're going to learn that, okay, there's a lot more here that I could discover and explore. I do believe that animals, specifically dogs, I don't know why dogs are coming to me, Elizabeth, but dogs are coming to me. I specifically believe that dogs are sort of, their purpose is to teach man and women about compassion, but I also believe they've come to heal. They come as their sort of mission to help us heal. And I think that in and of itself is very, very angelic, right? But animals, it depends also on the shamanic framework you're coming from too. So there's some deviations. So in the Four Winds tradition, the Peruvian tradition with Alberto Vialdo, their construct of the upper world, they have 5 worlds within the upper world. And one of those worlds is the animal world, right? And so they are in heaven, according to Alberto's in Alberto's way. They are sort of in that angelic realm, in heaven, in the upper world, which is very heaven-like. But animals in general do come, spirit animals, totem animals. It's different names for the same thing. These are animals who come, spirit animals that come, and they are our guides, and they're teachers, and they're wise. And so I say, yeah, I think they're from the angelic realm. I also think that there are animals here on earth too that are teaching us, that are guides.
Okay, that was a great question.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, I bet you if you ask different shamanic people, they'll tell you different things.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
They will, because there's, there are animals in the lower world and our power animals that are very connected with Earth, very grounded in Mother Earth, and very, very much sort of interested and committed to helping human beings in their life, in their human life, and they come as guides.
Okay. All right, you ready to move on to the next one?
Sure. I hope I was helpful, Elizabeth.
Yeah, you were. It was a great explanation. Yeah, I mean, it was informative to me because when you were talking about Peruvian and how there's different chambers or different levels, in the upper world, I'm sitting there going, well, that to me makes total sense that the animals would have their own area that they're in the upper world. I mean, it just made, to me, it made total sense.
Good.
Okay. All right. Next question.
Okay, this is from Hypnicity. How do I know if I am shamanic?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Well, actually, I had that question too because when you were talking about being born into it or having the calling, I was just wondering because I remember a long time ago when I was talking to you, and the first thing you said, or not one of the first things, one of the things you said, "Are you interested in being a shamanic practitioner?" And I went, "No." I mean, it was immediate.
Right. How do I know? I know.
And you went, "Well, I didn't think so."
Yes, it's a good question, and it's actually a very common question. And the answer to it, depending on where you look, Hypnicity. I don't know if you've already looked on the internet, but you could search through the internet. What's the evidence that I might be someone who's called to shamanism? And so there's a list usually of anything from 5 to 12 things. So I'll just go through a little bit because you might run into this stuff. So the first one is some people believe you have to be born with a call, Caul, I believe it is. And I know that those who are into Wicca or witchcraft, they sort of believe the same thing, that you need to be born with a call, which is like a film over your head and face when you're born at the time of birth. Or you're born with a birthmark. So some people believe you need to have a shamanic birthmark. Other things on the list would be you might directly be born with intuitive abilities, psychic abilities, prophetic abilities, or just an interest in it, like a real calling. And so someone in your tribe, in your circle, will recognize, oh, this child has the eye, or this can see, or spirits are around that child, and they will immediately begin to train that child from birth. The other thing is that you're born into a shamanic lineage, and so that would be sort of like the ticket to become a shaman. And then this idea of being called by spirit, which is how after many years of practicing shamanism, I was actually called. I was actually initiated in a journey where they had a ceremony around the fire, and I'm participating in the fire ceremony, thinking I'm just participating. And they come up and they have this big cape and this headdress that they put on me, and I was like, I don't really get what's going on, and I had to figure that out, and you'll have a draw in your heart often for it, or a deep, deep love of nature, Mother Earth. And for me, for most of my adult life, I had a deep, never-ending passion for inner transformation. And that was sort of like the thing that put me on the path to shamanism. And it was the thing. And it wasn't because I thought it was so great or I wanted to become a shaman or anything like that. I was so miserable emotionally. I had had trauma in my life, and I was so miserable and lost that I was willing to do anything, to learn anything to find relief. So it is something that you become passionate about, and you find a way. You find a way to study it, to learn it, and you walk on that path. Another sign is that you see those who have departed. You have intuitive, abilities. The other thing is you have relationships already with spirit, with your guides, with the trees in your backyard, with the animals that come by. And not just a relationship in the physical 3D world, but in the spiritual world. You may be one who sits and talks with the elementals because you can see them. And they come to your dreams, or they come in your meditations.
I'm going to say the elementals are noisy. They woke me up in the middle of the night one time and announced themselves. We are the elementals.
Yes.
Be prepared.
Yes, when they first came to me, they made moss grow all over my roof on the back of my house, which had never
Oh.
happened before. So I still haven't given them as much attention as they would like me to, or I would like to. But yeah, so, these are other kinds of signs. But it's really in your heart. I'd love to know, hypnicity, what your experience is, to be able to answer you individually, because these are very individual journeys.
Hypnosis, can you give us a few examples?
She did put some down.
Okay, good.
Let me bring it up. She said, I'm very drawn to crystals and theosophy.
Theosophy. Mm-hmm. That is Madame Blavatsky. It's a whole tradition, framework of learning.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It is. She was very connected with the New Thought age at the turn of the century. So she has a whole teaching in and of itself. I'm not an expert at it, but I did read her for a little while when I was in my early 30s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, she has a certificate from the Pure Energy Healing Academy.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder what her technique was that she learned. Did she learn Reiki? Did she learn hands-on healing, EFT?
So hypnosis, can you answer that question? I can't see the chat because the glare. So Susie's
I'm looking. Yeah, I haven't seen anything else yet.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I'll just sort of conclude that by saying that, these are some of the sort of obvious things to know whether or not you're shamanic or want to, bring shamanism into your life and then perhaps move on to being a practitioner. But that it's really individual. It's so individual. I'll tell you, when I was called, after I was called, which I didn't mention this part, they blew me open psychically. And it was really uncomfortable. And this is also part of the calling. And it's very important, right away, if you get blown open like that, whatever tradition it is, that you right away seek a teacher. Because it's very uncomfortable. I could just tell you experience after experience. And, it's scary. When you're not used to it, it can be frightening.
Can everybody one example of that being
blown
wide open, what that's like? Because there's a lot probably who have been.
Yeah, so let's see. The first example that comes to me just right off the top of my head is I was the youth educator at the Unity Church on Cape Cod. And I was involved with the church. I loved the church. And there was some unrest in that church with the minister and some of the members. And I remember driving to church during that time. And on the way there, I started to cry and cry and cry. And I didn't know what was going on and why I was feeling this way. I knew it had to do something at church. And what was happening at that time, at that exact moment when I'm driving there, is the minister was being betrayed, which ended up making him have to leave the church. And it was that moment that I tapped into, and I was seeing, the whole thing and the consequences of it and the hurt that everybody felt and the lying and the betrayal. And it all came at me at once. And it was very painful, and I sort of had to experience that. And that's not unusual for a shaman, to take energy through their system and disperse it, to transform it, to take it to where it needs to be when it needs to be released. We end up sometimes being a conduit for that. Another one is, oh my gosh, I remember walking one day to go to the I think it was like the DMV or something really dumb. And I'm walking on the sidewalk to the building, and all of a sudden someone who's passed is walking with me. And they're telling me I'm so-and-so and I'm this and that. And it happened to be someone a message for someone that was very close to me. And it was, and I got the whole download of what he wanted to say. And I had to call her and tell her what it was. And then she got on the horn with her other sisters because it was someone they knew in high school that had died. And it was just this big thing, Another time I had a woman who ended up staying at my house one night, sort of a happenstance, and she stayed at my house one night, and I had dinner, and I'd made dinner for friends, and she was part of that. And all through the whole dinner, I kept getting all of this information from her, but I was still sort of new at all of it, right? And I said no. I kept saying to Spirit, nope, I'm not going to do it. This is totally embarrassing. These are my friends. They don't know anything about this stuff. I don't want to make a fool of myself. So I'm sitting there, and I'm starting to literally turn bright red and sweat. I'm sweating. And what's happening is my refusal to tell what Spirit is giving me is the consequence, right? So I started saying a few little things. And then when everybody left, it turned out that she ended up spending the night with me. And so I had an opportunity after dinner to have this whole reading with her. And it was a little bit weird. I'm going to go into Weirdville. Because what I was seeing at dinner was, and this is the thing about shamanism, shamanism is all about dealing with spirit. It's all about spirit. Benevolent, benign, beautiful, loving, heavy, negative energies, right? Which for me, it was like, I don't know if I want to sign on. Eventually I got to the point where I was experiencing enough of that, because that's part of what I needed to experience, that I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Anyway, so my first real heavy duty experience that way was this woman at dinner. And at dinner, what I was experiencing was I was seeing demons coming out of her face.
Oh, wow.
Towards me. Like 12 of them. It was like every time I looked at her, and I'm like, it was hard, because I'm like, what is going on? Am I going insane? So after dinner, I talked with her, and I didn't want to say to her, oh my gosh, you have demons coming out of your face. Yeah. There was a lot more going on with her. She had been an addict, and she had just cleaned up her act, right? Mm-hmm. And she had turned to meditation. And she said, she had a son. She said, I have turned to meditation, and my teacher is teaching me how to leave my body so that I can die and go to heaven. Oh. So this is why Spirit was such a strong intervention. Mm-hmm. And so I talked a long time with her about that, and about her son, and about how her leaving her energy field left her open, left her empty, just like drugs. And this is all led by Spirit, and that you've taken one way of escaping your body and being present to another through meditation. And what happens is energies will then, because the universe doesn't like a void, energies will fill that space. And so I was telling her this thing, and I said, there's energies there. She says, I know. I said, oh, she goes, my son tells me he sees them all the time coming out of my face. So I'm like, okay, so they're not kidding around. This is real. And so that night she had an intervention that was so very important for her. I think it saved her life, actually. So, good. Yeah.
Okay.
You ready for a question?
You ready for another question?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, from Prince Charming's mom. How many people get stuck in the middle area? Could it be because we don't let go?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll tell you the story of my mother, that I actually needed to hire another shamanic practitioner named George Swimmer. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not. He's very, very prolific on Amazon. He's written several books, and was writing them in his 80s. So, yeah. So when my mother passed, she really, really struggled in the 3 days that she was passing, and flailing about, not conscious, really in the death process, and flailing her arms and legs, really fighting the whole thing. And I'm new to shamanism when this happens, as a practitioner, rather. And so I'm sitting with her. Our whole family is sitting with her for those 3 days as she moves through her death process. And I'm like, I can see her. I can see my mother. And I see her walking back and forth in her best periwinkle blue suit, right? And she's got a hanky in her hand. Now, she was 94 when she passed. So she was an elderly woman. And she's standing in front of this airplane. And I know exactly what this airplane is. and the stairs are down and the doors open. They're waiting for her. And she's pacing back and forth. Now, the airplane references back to the 70s when my mother and father traveled to Russia. And my mother at the time, we had passports where they actually had a booklet and they had to glue your picture in the booklet, right? Somehow. Anyway, so she arrives in Russia with my father, who, had business there and was being allowed into the country. And they separated my mother from my father. They arrested her.
Wow.
Now, at the time, I think she was in her mid 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They arrested her. She was only 5'2", the tiniest woman. And she was taken to these very barren barracks and told nothing. I think she was there for 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was somehow someone else's photo had stuck to the back of my mother's photo and then put into the passport.
Oh, gosh.
So she thought they thought she had, was trying to sneak into the country under the wrong identity.
Mm-hmm. And
And so I know that plane represented her trauma in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it was just sort of all there. I don't want to go. And it feels if I go there, it's going to be like going to Russia. And I don't want to go there. Now, she was a very religious woman, so it was surprising to see that about her. Anyway, so I talked with her. Go. You'll be able to help them, from the spiritual realm, from heaven. You'll be able to see them and talk with them. And I thought we were good to go. Well, probably maybe 6 months into it, I'm realizing that I'm having very, very strong thoughts that don't feel like my own. Mm-hmm. And they feel a little angry towards myself, which is unusual. And I realize that the things that I'm seeing are things that are not from my data bank, but they're from my mother's data bank, right? So I have my mother traveling along with me. So my mother didn't get on the plane. She hopped on board my energy. And what's interesting is she died from thyroid disease. And because I'm carrying her, I'm taking on her illness. And my thyroid is getting worse and worse. And she's getting angrier and angrier and saying meaner and meaner things. And I knew it was her. And I finally said, I have had enough of this. And what her deal was is that she was angry that she was upset that she couldn't see the family. That was very important to her grandkids and great grandkids. Mm. And so she hopped on board with me thinking that she could see them through me. But I rarely see my family. So she was getting angrier and angrier that she wasn't seeing her family. So I went to George Schwimmer and I said, listen, my mother's with me and I need help. I need you, to help her go on her way and to detach from my energy. And he did. And instantly, very quickly, my thyroid got much better. And I had no more of those intrusive thoughts. And my mother got help up into the spiritual realm. So people do get stuck. And what they do is they attach to other humans who are walking on earth. They attach to their energy system and they live in one of their chakras. And it takes energy to carry them in your life. It's grandfathers, it's mothers, it's uncles. I remember the first time I saw my shamanic practitioner that I worked with, Foster Perry, I had dead orphans in me because I had been in an orphanage and I was carrying them because there was a like attraction, you see. Mm-hmm. I was an orphan. They were an orphan. I could understand their story. And I was loving and desperate to be loved. And there you go. There's the attraction.
Right.
So there's a million reasons why people get stuck in the middle world. Simple reasons and very complex reasons. It can be, I want to get even. It can be, I want to get even, or I hate.
That's a strong one. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Gwendolyn. It looks like we're about to run out of time here. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, Susie, for helping us. And thanks, everybody, for joining in on the chat. And we really enjoyed this conversation, and it was very exciting. So, all right, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll have Nancy Jean on. She will be giving us a demonstration of a monthly reading, when she'll be using the cards, and she'll go through each month of the year and tell you what's going to happen. So we'll have a demonstration of that tomorrow. So join us tomorrow at 12 Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time, and we will see y'all later. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.